this is our next speaker, Oskar, and I will give you just a slight introduction because we officially met this morning. I mean, in person, right? But we exchanged a lot of emails. Yeah, you can get the microphone as well. So he's
Thank
one
you.
of two external speakers. So actually, he's not working for TX yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. So the thing is that I got the recommendation from Milica to contact him because the first thing that you think about when you say tradition is somehow agriculture, right? And it was, interesting for me to tackle that topic just to see what's happening with those two things in Serbia. And your name just pops out everywhere. And yes, so many podcasts, so many different conferences. You're really famous, I must say.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like an evangelist for digital agriculture.
Yeah, so I really look forward to your talk today, and it's interesting to hear how you connected those two areas and have fun, like they said in the beginning, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Can I just have the pointer, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. So hello everyone, my name is Oskar. Thanks. And thanks a lot to both Militas, or shall I say Milita and Mitica, just to differentiate between the two, for inviting me here. It's again wonderful to be here. I see that there is a lot of enthusiasm in this room. So I hope that you're going to love the story about digital agriculture. So basically what I do is that I've got one presentation with 200 slides, but don't worry, you'll be home for dinner because I just take some of those that I need and leave out most of them. And I also have a difficult task of keeping you awake after lunch in these cozy sofas, so I'll do my best and I shout. Digital agriculture, so I'll say a few words about myself at the beginning. So I started my career as a researcher at Bioscience Institute. I was among the first 10 or 15 people who actually founded the Institute in 2015, and that's the first public research institute that was founded in Serbia after 40 years. So we began our research in data analytics, in agriculture, and we applied for Syngenta Crop Challenge, which proved to be a turning point in our careers. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with data challenges, but there are plenty of those around. Basically, companies have a lot of data and they just give it out to the public, to research institutions, to companies and teams to do whatever with them. So in 2016, we came fourth on Syngenta Crop Challenge, which is like a World Cup in data analytics in agriculture. But we were better than MIT that came fifth. So we continued working on that, and in 2017 we came first in front of the likes of Stanford, MIT, Fraunhofer from Germany, and other institutions. We also received Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grants. We got PhDs in the meantime and founded a company called Crops in 2019 with the idea to do AI in agriculture in particular. So a very, very small niche. But we had some success with that. And I'm also Assistant Director of Bioscience for Innovation and Collaboration with Industry. And I have plenty of horizons, so scientific, geeky projects in AI, as well as a project with NASA. So what is it about agriculture that drew my attention? So agriculture is, we said, the most traditional industry, and it all kicked off some 12,000 years ago because us humans, we're so lazy creatures that we didn't want to go collect berries and hunt deer and these things. So we just settled down and started growing crops. And that was the first agricultural revolution. The second one, or maybe the first and the half one, was the Arab agricultural revolution. And can any of you guess what this contraption did? Say it again, please. Yeah, it was a mill, and it was a device used for irrigation because the water went up and through this aqueduct all the way to the crop. So we got higher yields because of these kinds of inventions. But then we had a second agricultural revolution in the 1700s and 1800s. And here we see also the global character of innovation, because this was the British agricultural revolution that got kicked off by the Dutch who improved the Chinese plow. So you can see that information started flowing all around the world. And then we used basically the mechanical sciences and industry to improve the yields. And then we had the third agricultural revolution in the 60s, which was called the Green Revolution, but it wasn't green in today's sense of being green. So it wasn't really sustainable, eco-friendly. It was green because everything got greener. So we used chemical fertilizers, we used pesticides. So based on the chemical innovations, we managed to increase the yields and to decrease the risks. But it also came at a price. But today we have an even more important challenge, and that is that by the year 2050, there will be 10 billion people living on this planet, and to feed them all, we need to increase the yield for 70%, which is a tremendous task for us. And but so we need to be even more innovative than we've been throughout the history. And this time we need to be sustainable. So we really need to be green, not like that we just increase the yields. And this time we actually need to care for the environment. So this is just one statistic saying that the global farmlands increased for 9% since the year 2000. And it means that it increased for the size of all these countries combined. So if you combine the total area of France, Germany, and the Benelux countries, that's how much there's the area of forests that we chop down in the Amazon, in the Congo Basin, and all around the world. So we can't do that anymore because we've got limited resources. So speaking of resources, so the average person in this world uses the resources that 1.75 Earths would provide. And if you live your life like an average American, then you would need more than 5 planets to replenish the resources that you consume. We in Serbia are at around 1.9 Earths, so you can see that it's not sustainable. And also, like everything we do needs to not just be profitable, because if it's not profitable, it's not going to work. I mean, we live in capitalism. If it's not good for the planet, it's not sustainable, but it also needs to be good for the people. So we also need to think about sociology, not just mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, AI, and these things. So we need to have all those components combined. So that is a kind of a vision that was set by Biosense 10 years ago, and the one which still holds today. So what we do is basically summarize on this picture here. So if we start from the bottom, we've got nano microelectronics, which is basically sensor design. We're designing sensors for soil quality, plant health, etc. Then we've got robotics. There are plenty of robots around in the industry, like mechanical, like robotic arms assembling cars, etc. But we also have something like that in agriculture. We've got drones, and we've got satellites, we've got IoT devices, and all that goes into the cloud. And that is where the magic happens with AI, machine learning, big data analytics, however you call it. It's basically statistics on steroids. So we're using some really advanced techniques to find the hidden dependencies between the data, to model the ecosystem, the plants, crops, etc., and to see how we can optimize them. And this optimization needs to be profitable, needs to bring high yields, needs to bring lower risks, so that we're not affected by the drought, because we also had the drought this year, 2 years ago, etc. And it needs to be good for biodiversity. So today, the dominant paradigm in agriculture is precision ag, and it basically means that all the things that you're doing, every decision you make needs to be done on a very small scale. So you can't just say, I'm going to put 100 kilos of fertilizer in this field. You need to say exactly how much you're going to put on every meter, or how much you're going to feed every plant on your field. So just as we're going towards precision medicine or like personalized medicine, we're going towards precision ag as well. So this is just an illustration of a line of trees. So next to the motorway, if you go from here to Novi Sad, it'll be on your right-hand side around India, and you'll see the sine wave there. And that sine wave means that although all these trees were planted in one day or 1 week, they received pretty much equal amounts of sunlight, rain, etc. They all have a different height, but it's not random heights. It's following a sine wave, which means that the soil is changing also like a sine wave, and that we need to give all these plants exactly what they need according to the soil properties. I'm going to promote some of my colleagues. So some of my colleagues also have this company called Atar, and I think it's a great illustration of what precision ag is. So you basically are not spraying the whole field against the weeds because you're polluting the soil, you're making the quality of the food bad, the food will contain pesticides, etc. So rather than that, they're just using camera to detect where the weeds are, and they are precision spraying the weeds and not the plants and not the soil and nothing else. So you can save some money and still be more sustainable. And what I mentioned about data is that every company today is a data company. So in agriculture, it's the same. I mean, John Deere is generating more data than Twitter. And you're wondering how is it that it's like that? Well, every tractor is combined with sensors for the wheels, for the steering wheel, then common harvesters are measuring the yield, then we're measuring the speed of tractors within the field, and there are a lot of different data points that you generate, and when you sum it up across all the tractors, all the combine harvesters, you get more data than what is generated by Twitter or X. Drones. So I imagine that all of you have seen drones, some of you have drones, and I don't think that there is a single wedding or a birthday party without a drone in 2024. So everybody's using it, but farmers are using it as well. So they're quite prominent in our field. So this is one photo of a blueberry field in Shumadia from a drone. But it's a kind of a pretty image that we could use, but we're not actually using. And what we are using are some different things. So using those images, we're calculating different so-called vegetation indices. And all those indices are actually indicators of, for example, the abundance of water, the availability of nutrients, the intensity of photosynthesis, etc. And now we can say, okay, you see the green part there, everything is okay there, you don't need to see anything basically, but you see the red part on the left as well, and that's where you need to do some action to maybe irrigate more, to water the plants, or to put some more fertilizer, etc. And then comes AI on top of it. So what we did here was to use some deep learning models like YOLO. So I don't know if you're all into AI, so I might be swearing, but like YOLO models, UNet, ResNet, etc., to detect those lines of blueberries. And why we need that is because we need to differentiate between blueberries and weeds and all the inter-row spaces. So, for example, we can use clustering as well, like k-means and other algorithms to see what zones we have inside a field. And once we delineate those zones, we can say that within a zone, we've got homogeneous properties of the soil and plants, but between one another, the zones are quite different. So you can also decide what you're going to do for every zone in particular. So you can say, in this zone, I'm going to put 100 kilos of fertilizer. In this one, I'll put 150, etc. And if you need to find, like if you're doing measurements of the soil, if you're taking the samples, then you should go to those points which are like the centroid of those zones. And then come the robots. So robots are getting more and more into agriculture because there are a lot of tasks which are really hard. So humans don't want to do that. And, we spoke about agriculture. I said that I was literally born in central heating. So I can't tell you that I've been working in the field for 20 years before I came into AI. But for example, a colleague of mine told me that in his blueberry field, last year there was 300 Nepalese workers picking the blueberries, digging out the weeds. So you can see that there is a huge demand for that. But I don't believe that any of you or me actually dreamed of picking blueberries one day when we grow up. So there are a lot of tasks that need to be done, but we don't want humans to do them. So that's why we're using robots to, for example, pick the peppers, to spray the weeds. And there is even one initiative called Hand-Free Hectare, I think in Cranfields, where they have 1 hectare of wheat where not a single human has entered in that field. And basically, they're scanning it with the drones, then they take the self-driving tractors and then let them go to the field and then do whatever it needs. So you get produce in the end, but it's not so cheap these days. But of course, we're getting there. This is one robot that was developed at Biosense, and we've got 2 robots. So we've got Lala and Sosa. So we've got the full gender equality even in the robotic world. And it was designed according to the proverb: if the mountain won't go to Muhammad, Muhammad must come to the mountain. So basically, if we want to analyze the soil, we are not taking the soil to the lab, we're taking the lab to the soil. So we built this kind of moving lab which goes through the field. So based on drone scanning, we know where to send it, and then it's scanning the soil on the go, and you get the results within 15 minutes and not within 2 weeks. So that's one of the examples. We've got the newer version, and of course it's called Gari, which is like the son of Lala and Sosa. So sorry for this kind of slang, but I see that there are some probably Novi Sad people there. Yeah, I could have guessed it. So the difference between them, that Gary is actually made for going through blueberries. So it needs to be under a 45-degree angle, because those kind of ridges in which blueberries grow are under a 45-degree angle. And what it does is that it reaches the ridge, it digs out a piece of soil, it puts it into this kind of NutriBullet and basically makes a juice out of it. And that's when you dip the sensors inside in this solution and you get the readings immediately. But there is also the parts where you need to route the robot through the fields, and there is a lot of optimization and heuristics and deep learning and who knows what, so that you would optimize the trajectory and that you would minimize the power consumption of the robot, so they could remain on the field for a few hours without recharging. There's, of course, a lot of AI involved in movements as well. So if a robot comes to the point, it needs to detect the blueberry bush so it doesn't damage it. And it also needs to detect the distance between the blueberry and the robot so that it knows where it's positioned. And there is some brains here between like when you reach the point, how do you turn for 90 degrees, because you can't really have some sort of orientation in the blueberry lines. I mean, you do have somebody who needs to double check it. And the reason why we call them like flexi robots is that one robot cannot just do one thing once a year and then get into the garage and wait for the next year. It needs to be useful to the farmer the whole year round. So we also equipped the robots with this sprayer. So you can see that this above's got a sprayer arm, and then it's got also some kind of plantometers, which are used for detecting the quality of the plants, the level of photosynthesis, etc. And basically, we're using deep learning again to detect the weeds, so the things that the robotic arm should spray, to detect humans so that it won't hurt them, and to be safe and to be very effective. So this is the robot in vineyards as well, so it's quite flexible. So moving on to the satellites, the difference between drones and satellites is that drones can provide images at a centimeter resolution, but they're not really handy because you need to go to the field and then fly the drone and then get the data, come back. With satellites, as Milica said, like it's much easier because you're getting satellite images every 5 days for every single point on Earth. So Serbia, Mongolia, Madagascar, you can just get and download those images and process them. And you can get them in 12 different spectral bands. So us humans, we see things in red, green, and blue, but and that's how your mobile phone cameras operate as well. But there are a lot of different parts of the spectrum, like infrared, like thermal part of the spectrum, and panchromatic, which are more useful for agriculture than satellites. And this is the same blueberry fields, but from a satellite. So you can see the resolution is not a centimeter resolution, so it's much coarser, but you can get these kind of images for every piece of land on Earth. So we're using satellite images to monitor the droughts. You can also see those like circular irrigated fields. We can calculate the number of irrigated fields, the need for irrigation, the total need, the effects of droughts. And that's what we're doing with NASA. We're trying to simulate what will happen due to climate change in the next 50 years and how our Serbian agriculture will react to it. So we see that the planting dates, for example, are moving towards sooner dates so that the whole vegetation cycle would end before the summer drought. And the length of the season is changing, the prices are changing, and it's all very intertwined. So this is another, well, this is actually Milica's master thesis, so I won't go into details, but actually we're starting from a cadastre, and then we're like painting every cadastral field into a different color by the type of crop that is planted there. And don't worry, we're not snitching anyone. There is no cannabis categories, you see, so it's just maize, wheat, soybeans, and all that. But anyway, if you know what the areas are, you can also plan for the season. You can say how much fertilizer you need, what the prices are going to be. You can validate if something was planted on a field. You can check the crop rotation, because it's not very good for the soil to plant the same crop from one year to the other. So that's the kind of things that we do. And in general, there is this kind of trade-off between being very accurate at a single point, which is what you get if you install a sensor in the soil. And so you get just like a measurements for just one point. And on the other hand, you've got satellites, and you can get the images for all over the world, but then the resolution is like 10 meters. So it's not very good. But so the question is like what to use, and there is no easy answer, because you should in theory use all of them. So I would say that like precision ag and digital ag, it's basically like one layer cake of different data sets. So you have soil data, weather data, satellite data, sensor data, any kind of data you can get a hold of, and you need to stack it up and then slice it and see what's happening underneath. So here's just one example what we did with, for example, with variety choice. So every farmer is confronted with the decision what to plant on his fields every year. And it's a tough choice because let's say that you've got like 5 different options, which is like 5 different crops you can choose between: wheat, maize, sugar beet, soybean, and barley, for example. So on one field, you have 5 different options. On 2 fields, you've got 5 times 5 different options, which is equal to 25 different options. So for 14 fields, you got as many options as there are humans on Earth, and for 21 fields, as the number of ants, and for 30 fields, the number of options what to plant where. It's not too many. There are people with 100 fields in Serbia. The number of options what to plant where is equal to the number of stars in the universe. So, and you're probably wondering how people are doing it today. Well, this is roughly how. So, you know, they say, well, my grandfather planted wheat here, so I'll plant wheat as well. And, or they say, okay, my neighbor planted sugar beets. Okay, so I'll plant sugar beets so that my yields are higher, and so on. So it's not very exact science, but using big data analytics and AI, you can actually increase the yields by a quarter and still reduce the risk. So you can have both things at once. And how we solved it is that we use kind of big data analytics, so data coming from weather stations, satellites, soil data, etc., and we put it all in one big model, and then had a model of crop growth. And then we use something, we got from economics. We actually like brutally stalled portfolio optimization, and now we'll have like kind of portfolio of different seeds of different varieties, so that you're essentially like de-risking everything. And in the end, you can tell the farmer, well, you should have maybe, let's call it like just soybean hybrids varieties. So you can have like hybrid 7 with 50% and then hybrid 19 with 20% and so on. So you can like diversify or and lower the risk. So it's very interesting that what we're using on one side are deep neural networks which draw inspiration from human brains. And on the other hand, we've got optimization, which is based on evolutionary algorithms. And it means that we got inspiration from nature, how to build those models and those techniques. And then we're doing something, and then we're getting back to agriculture and nature, and then we're applying those algorithms. So there is a kind of feedback loop. And regarding AI, I found these quotes, and I'm arguing that AI is actually a Yugoslav invention, because there was an article from 1830. And by the way, does any of you know, it's called Leibacher Wochenblatt. Sorry for my German, especially to the team in Switzerland. Do you know what city that is? No, but Ljubljana? Yeah, that's where the Laibach band is from. So in Ljubljanese newspapers, we had this quote. So it says, in these living machines, 2 steel springs replace the weaver's hands, throwing the shuttle with speed and precision that enchants. Man is merely the overseer of machines, walking in a desert of his own creation, where the motion and artificial intelligence obscure the presence of real life. So it was his impression of industrial revolution, and that's why I'm saying that. And by the way, like speaking of AI, I know that we're all using those terms like machine learning and AI and big data analytics. Do you know what is the difference between AI and machine learning? Well, neither do I, to be honest, but the best definition that I found is that if it's in PowerPoint, then it's AI. If it's in Python, it's machine learning. So you can stick with that. Anyway, we're using AI quite a lot, and just like if 5 minutes, okay, yeah, I'll sort it out. So one thing that we're doing is like crop growth monitoring. So we're running those models with new satellite data which are coming up with weather forecasts, so we can tell also something like yield forecasts. So if the yields are going to be high or they're going to be low, like this year, for example. We also produce reports, so at a county level or municipality level, what are the average yields, what can you expect, etc. Then we're providing crop maps so that we know what is planted on every field. So this is something that we are doing actually in the startup that my colleague Sanya and I founded 5 years ago, and we developed this into a product. So the company is cropped, the product is Space Garden, so it's like watching a garden from space. And all these maps were generated, and they're out there for the users, mainly like companies and banks, etc. So for example, banks can use this kind of maps to assess their clients. So yeah, instead of assessing the age of the client, of the farmer, how many hectares does he have, how many children, wives, or whatever he has, dogs and cats, and it's not really relevant for return on investment, but what is relevant are the yield, risk, and these agronomic factors, the real life factors. So for example, you can see the farmers on the right, they have high productivity, like they're in blue, which means blue is good, red is bad. And you've got those guys here, which are in reds, but also there are some differences even between the neighbors, and they have a pretty similar soil quality, pretty similar rainfall, but yet they're in different colors. So like, for example, here, this one is in blue, this one is in red. So the banks can assess their clients automatically. Insurance companies are there as well. This is one damage that happened last year across Vrbas. And this was like a tornado that flew across Vrbas and just tore down everything. So this is a kind of information that insurance companies need, banks as well, seed companies and others. We can detect water logging, which is like puddles on the fields, damages due to winds. We can assess the organic matter content, like the level of humus in the soil, not the one that you eat, but the one organic matter and nitrogen, all of that. We can detect burnt farmland, and this is just like a speedy overview of what you can do with satellites. But there is no big data analytics unless you have big data. And the real question is how to get big data. And it's not an easy one, and it's really hard to collect the data. It's hard to collaborate with different actors like farmers, insurance companies, and banks. But the Chinese proverb says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So if we want to deal with big data in agriculture, we need to do it sooner rather than later. And instead of having these analyses on a piece of paper, we need to digitize and digitize the whole process, and then to move to platforms such as AgriSense that we developed at Biosense in 2017. And since then, we got more than 20,000 users. And when you sum up the whole area, which is being managed by those 20,000 users, you get 1/4 of all Serbian farmland, which is, I think, a tremendous advance, especially in a country like Serbia. So just to wrap up, is there a place for humans here? Yes, but that place is diminishing in time, and I think that's luckily for humans. So I think all these technologies are going to help humans. At first, we're going to have some, let's say, analyses, etc., statistics that are going to help. Then the next level are the decision support systems. So basically you get all the data you need, you get all the assessments, different strategies, and then it's human who decides on what to do, like what is the strategy, etc. But the top level and where we're getting to is completely automated production, which is digitized, where there are sensors around, where there are drones and satellites, and where farmers, besides the tractor and the plow, they also need to have a laptop and an iPad or whatever. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation about agriculture, and I hope that you enjoyed it.
Okay, good. I don't have to say test anymore. That was great. Before we skip into questions from audience, can you answer the question I asked Milica in the previous presentation?
What was that?
How do you manage actually to explain to the people who are, I mean, working in agriculture? They're not technical people. They don't have any clue about all the machine learning or artificial intelligence behind. So how does that cooperation looks like actually?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. So some of them are very educated, and we see a shift in agriculture as well, where younger generations use technologies quite more often. And like the statistics say that 80% of Serbian people uses Facebook. So if they can use Facebook, they can use these things as well. You know, if they can send like good morning coffee, dobro jutro kafice and all that, you know, they can send the reports as well. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we see a dramatic change there. I think it's a kind of a Darwinian selection. So the ones who do not apply technologies are just going to be left out of the whole agriculture. So there are a lot of trends happening. But the third thing is that sometimes you can't do anything with farmers, with most of them, because they also don't have the resources to engage in this kind of digital transformation. But you can also work with some intermediaries. So instead of like recommending farmer what to plant, you can recommend the seed company what to sell to the farmers. And if the seed company manages to sell the right variety, the right hybrid, then the farmers are going to be happy as well with higher yields. The company is going to have a larger market share, etc. So you need to sometimes find some kind of leeways and shortcuts, but eventually you need to get to the farmers.
I have one more question.
Yes, please.
Do you maybe know what percentage of the, I mean, yields and farms or whatever are actually owned by like private property in Serbia?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. So I don't know if I have the right figures, but it's something like that. That like 90% of farms are owned by smallholder farmers, and there are 350,000 farmers in Serbia. Multiply that with like by 3 or 4, and you get like maybe 20 or 30% of Serbia dependent on agriculture. But in terms of like the output that we're producing, most of the output comes from the large companies which have better technology, which have bigger areas, and they have like technologically advanced production.
Cool. Look forward to that tractor with laptop. I will probably use
Me
that
too.
one. Okay, do you have any questions? Yeah? Just wait for the microphone, sorry.
Really important question. So you're saying that AI can improve the quality of rakia?
Yeah, eventually, yes.
Yeah. Then
Especially,
I will invest my own money.
especially the blueberry rakia.
Okay, anything else? Okay.
Okay, yeah. Now, really, how far are we from actually using the robots and drones in picking up fruits and, but commercially, to be commercially used?
That's a good question, because the speed of adoption is also quite variable, not just across the world. Like it's not that you go to Germany and everybody's got their own robots, but I think that it's going to go slowly until a point where people are too expensive to pay. So like 300 Nepalese workers, like it costs something. So I think that we're still in the developing stage, but at some point we're going to see a rapid adoption, like in 5 to 10 years, I believe. And with drones, it's become really accessible to everyone. So I think that a lot of farmers are using them right now.
We've seen video clips, or who's seen those clips where actually drones are picking up apples and stuff.
Yeah.
So very interesting stuff. But the thing is that commercially available now?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
will be?
Well, drones are probably not going to pick apples because the battery time and is limited. So the autonomy is a drone is limited. But drones are used very much even in Serbia today for spraying the crops. So, for example, if you have a vineyard which is like on a very steep terrain, you can't go there and just walk through the vineyard, etc. It's easier to get a drone and to spray it. And like for monitoring as well, for monitoring the damages, it's already there.
Cool, thank you.
Cheers.
Additional question. You've shown those maps with the crops, with the types of the crops. How did you go mapping all the things?
So we actually didn't go, AI did it, and that's one of the applications of AI. So basically you just take a number of points where you train the algorithm and tell it like, okay, listen, algorithm, this is wheat and these are apples and these are, I don't know.
But you had to go through the training of the model and
Yes.
everything to feed it with the data.
Yes,
how
definitely.
large was the data?
Oh, well, you know, luckily, we on Biosense have students, and so you so you send students around to collect some data, and then, you know, you correlate those like ground truth points with the satellite's response, and then the algorithm learns how to differentiate between them.
Cool. Thank you so much for the
Cheers.
answers and great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Anybody
Question
else?
here?
Sorry, Dominic. Yes. Poor students. Here you go.
Yes, first, thank you for being here and telling us about the research there. Maybe first a short remark, like on one of the last pictures, I think it's a little bit critical to say like that people which are not using the new technologies and so on, being labeled as being a little bit stupid farmers there, because I think there are good reasons why you don't want to be a part of the system or like depending on the big agro-technological companies in the end. But the question itself, I want to map it also to our news industry, where we have seen that like the large companies building the large LLM models in the end are scraping our articles, using it to train their models and making profit out of it without giving the creator of the data something back. And I was wondering, like, when you're also showing like the satellite images, maybe also what is used by drones, are there some initiatives or ideas to give the farmers, which might not have an option to opt out as well in this system, to give compensations back because they are actually generating the data where the models can be learned on?
Thanks for your question. So you touched on some really important parts, like the value of the data and the ownership of the data. But first of all, like I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't precise enough. I didn't want to say that farmers are not using technology because they can't use technology. It's that they sometimes don't have an initiative to use it. So a typical farm size in Serbia is 2 to 5 hectares. And for 2 to 5 hectares, it doesn't pay off to buy 3 drones and then go with a satellite and have 3 tractors. You know, your resources are limited. So it all depends on the resources and the intensity of agriculture you want to achieve. The second question is about the data, and there are some schemes of how to get the data from farmers, and data is sometimes seen as a very important commodity. But currently, I think that is the bottleneck of development of AI in agriculture, because we are still not collecting data as much as we should. So a lot of data goes wasted. So for example, the 350,000 farmers in Serbia, they could collect 350,000 lines in Excel, like what did you plant, what fertilizer you use, how much, on what date, etc. But we don't have that. So I think it's important to firstly understand the value of data, and then to provide some innovations which don't have to be strictly technological innovations, but could be as well sociological or governmental innovations that would give us a way to gather the data and then to, again, apply the AI algorithms on top of it.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Oskar.